Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
I think most of you know the infamous Kathy Love, but I have the honor of serving as Savannah Technical College's president. And I want to thank you for joining us today. May is National Preservation Month, when communities come together to celebrate their heritage and the historic tourism, all of the cultural events that we derive from the past. It began as a one-week recognition in 1973 and was expanded to the full month of May in 2005. This gives communities greater opportunities to have different celebrations and recognize more and more of the historic treasures that we have. Savannah Tech has the only public, hands-on historic preservation program in Georgia. We've been able to help provide the historic preservation skills needed in our area. And I often tell my counterparts across the state that everywhere in Georgia has really old buildings, great history, but I really don't know of any other location that this program would have succeeded as it has here in Savannah. It's small, but it's mighty. We graduate fewer than 10 students a year. So as you leave today and see some great, amazing things, go spread the word, because we sure would like to have more than 10 graduates every year. As we are famous for the Spanish moss and all the things that make Savannah wonderful, we often go and we see these historic markers as we go along the path. Places that you feel like you stop and read and go, well, I never realized that's why this was here, that's why that was there. So we have the historic markers that are put up, but sometimes they fall into disrepair, and the communities find it difficult to come up with the funding to repair them. I was looking online last night and doing a little research, and you could get some historic markers for well over $5,000. So if something happens and it gets knocked over, that's a good chunk of money that the community or whoever sponsored the marker has to come up with. So today we're here to celebrate what I think is a very significant accomplishment made within our Historic Preservation Department. And it has a name that is just slips off your tongue. It is the Historic Marker Collar Bracket. Savannah Technical College has been awarded a patent, and that's the first within our technical college system. But we confirmed that with TCSG to have a project that was awarded a patent. And it was not an overnight process either. I believe it was 4 years ago when it began, and we just received notification that it was awarded. I'm not even going to try to talk about what the Historic Marker Collar Bracket does, other than say, point over there to look. But Benjamin Curry will talk to you in a few minutes and tell you about the specifics of that. And while we say this is a product of the Historic Preservation Program, it really was a joint effort with our drafting program, with our precision machining program, and our Historic Preservation Program. In October of 2019, our students were invited to present on the Historic Marker Collar Bracket at the Preservation Trades Network International Trades Workshops and Conference in Stirling, Scotland. And I believe it's O'Shea and to the students, May Valley, who's the Executive Director of Repurpose Savannah, and Shay Caruso, who works in preservation and blacksmithing at the Coastal Heritage Society, are here with us today.
I'm sorry, they're not out there. They were the ones that presented. My apologies.
We hope that they can join us today, and if they come in a few minutes, we'll be sure to recognize them. We also have joining us here today the chair of our local board of directors, Mary Warnell, behind the camera. And she was instrumental in the work that our students did in restoring the historic restoration on Highway 2A in Pembroke. So Mary, thank you for your leadership and all that you do for the college. We've got many partners with our historic preservation efforts in the community, Historic Savannah, Georgia Historical Society, and so we appreciate the work that our students are allowed to do in partnership with these great organizations. We have members of the Savannah Technical College Foundation with us today. They really played a huge role in making sure that this happened. They give their time, their talents, their resources to make sure that Savannah Tech can do things that go beyond the traditional classroom and lab experiences. So without the support of that foundation, we couldn't do what we did. And so here to tell you a little bit more about the foundation and the foundation's role in the separate is Sam McCatcher, the past president of the Savannah Technical College Foundation.
Thank you, Dr. Love. Good morning, everybody. Because you've chosen to be here today, my guess is you already know what a great job Savannah Technical College does. But this is workforce development for our region. And just spend some time on this campus and you get a greater appreciation for all the things that can happen here and the opportunity that exists. I know for a fact that Benjamin Curran is a very talented historic preservationist, and appreciate some help that he's given me at my house recently, so thank you very much. Savannah Tech has tremendous resources, and the students that become part of our workforce are very talented. Thomas and Hutton has had the opportunity to hire some technicians, and they are a critical part of our workforce. I happen to have one individual in my mind right now. I can picture him, and he is making a lot of things happen, not only at Thomas and Hutton, but he is making a lot of things happen in this community, and we are thankful for his experience here. Our restaurants depend on Savannah Technical College. If you want to see technology at work, go spend some time in the aviation program over in Crossroads Business Park. There are a lot of things happening. What you may not know about, though, that's the college. What you may not know about is the foundation. So the Savannah Technical College Foundation exists to support the college with its mission and its vision, helping the students, helping the programs, helping the facilities. And it's a group of volunteers. It is a separate organization. It's a group of volunteers throughout the community, throughout the region, because the college covers more than just Savannah, with several campuses. And that group of people raises money, raises awareness to make sure that people understand what is going on here at the college. Before COVID, so I think we are now going to enter that time when masks are starting to shed. We're all going to have everything pre-COVID and after COVID. So pre-COVID, we were raising about $1 million a year to support the college on average. And I told you about the aviation program. You're going to see more about the Downtown Culinary Institute in the near future. That'll be a different press conference. Looking forward to that one. With the support, the foundation is also doing scholarships for about $100,000 a year to needy students or deserving students, and that is really important as it relates to workforce development and helping those students. Today's announcement, as Dr. Love set up, is a really perfect way to show what the foundation is able to do, because with those private resources, because of a patent that probably was not in Dr. Love's budget that she submitted to the state anywhere along the way, and I'm sure it wasn't in your department budget, but there was an opportunity that presented itself, and the foundation discussed it and decided that we would invest in that patent. Because what a patent is going to do for the foundation, once word gets out, which is why we're here today, to get word out, but that's going to be recurring revenue. And recurring revenue is going to help meet recurring need. That would be scholarships. So this is just a way that the foundation has helped, and those royalties are going to continue our scholarship effort. This has been a great experience for the foundation, and at this time, I would like for Benjamin Curran, the department head in historic preservation, to come give you some details on the marker itself.
Good morning. I'm not used to taking that off. In fact, sometimes my students will come in and I'll still have it on while I'm in my office. I haven't adopted that as the norm. Thank you, Sam. Dr. Love, on behalf of the college community as a whole, I'd like to thank you for your continued support and encouragement throughout this endeavor and all the other ones that we as instructors embark upon. This project, I believe, exemplifies the two-year college's ability to provide students with a learning opportunity that can be transformative in their future and embolden their personal and professional communities as a whole. We were introduced to this issue approximately 4 years ago this semester actually. And my students and I saw this issue that needed resolution and needed some sort of solution. So through the creative process, we came to the determination that we could fabricate something separately from the original marker that would incorporate a universal coupling, something that could fit the breadth of marker designs out there, and provide assistance to local institutions, local communities that that struggle to raise the funds for replacing a marker in a lot of situations that might seem like money that could be spent somewhere else. And so this device provides them with the ability to cover those costs more effectively and efficiently. Students and instructors from the Historic Preservation Department, Drafting, and Precision Manufacturing all brought to this project their own skills, knowledge, to solve a real-world challenge to our industry. We began as a class concept, was brought to life in a collaborative environment that incorporated three-dimensional digital design, real-world design using model material, and 3D scanning and 3D printing. One thing I like to highlight is that preservation isn't just about old buildings. There are ample opportunities to include new techniques, new materials, new technologies, and so we try to do that within our program. We tested and refined our design, ultimately creating a prototype that ended up being used in the actual fabrication process. Together we researched, discussed, developed, created, designed, redesigned, tested, failed, and finally succeeded in creating a solution that we saw would be an impact to this broad-scale project or problem. These kind of learning opportunities allow us to focus on critical thinking and problem solving, which are fundamental to our program, but also industry as a whole in this area. Discovering solutions to challenging problems requires the fortitude and conviction of our students in challenging situations. With projects such as this, our students learn the importance of failure as a foundation to success, which I think is very, very important. Each step of this process required our students to formulate, test hypotheses, recognize a well-defined, designed method, recognize that that wouldn't work, and quickly adapt to this new information and new understanding of the problem as a whole. In doing so, they develop the comfort with failure necessary to overcome adversity, just like we have to do on a daily basis. As instructors, we have the unique opportunity to create learning environments and activities that most students would not participate in until their last couple years of a 4-year education. For our students, that opportunity happened their first semester. All of the students introduced at one point or another were first or second semester students. Over the 4 years, the project impacted more than 15 students in our division and differing programs. And as Dr. Love noted, Shay Caruso and May Bowley were allotted the opportunity through the generous giving of the foundation, student activities, and a small grant from the 1772 Foundation to go to Stirling, Scotland, where they presented at an international conference on preservation. With that said, I would be remiss in my duties if I did not offer our collective thanks to some of those here today that have been foundational in the evolution and development of this project. First, I'd like to thank Mary Morrison, whose generosity, along with her husband, her late husband Howard, who I have a tremendous respect and a whole lot of gratitude to, allowed us to bring in our visiting artists who work specifically with the students over the course of a full week. That's something that we try to do every semester, and the students really, really enjoy. To Mary Warnell, there you are. I'd like to thank you for your conviction and belief in our efforts and having the confidence in us to allow us the opportunity to repair and replace the Blue Star highway marker honoring the United States Armed Forces, which is located in Pembroke. To my colleagues, Brian Mossing and Jeff Friend, for their collaborative spirit and support, and to the members of Savannah Technical College Foundation for their financial support and belief in this endeavor. And sadly, these two individuals were not able to join us this evening, but they played a very crucial role. Gary Knappenberger, who is a amazing craftsperson that does a lot of casting projects for the National Park Service and notable historic preservation projects. He came in and worked with our students over 2 visiting artistships over the progress of 2 years, assisted us in building our furnace, which we could not have done without his assistance. Rosa, our intellectual property lawyer, whose guidance led us through this 2-year project and always had confidence in this as a viable candidate for a patent, even when it seemed like the examiners did not agree with him. And sometimes I lost faith too. So with that all said, I very much appreciate the opportunity that I had as well as an instructor and a department head to have the freedom to develop this project, follow through with it, and create something that was beneficial to our students, our school, and our industry and communities as a whole. So thank you very much. Dr. Love, I'll hand this back to you.
So I'm not Dr. Love, but the yesterday's rainstorm got in the way of our being able to offer a mold demonstration today. So instead of the opportunity to see mold making happen, you have several examples over here of the brackets before and the methodology resulting in the finished product, and there's more to see in the lab. So if there are any questions, all of the speakers would be available to entertain questions or interviews for the media that are with us today. Otherwise, we can adjourn to the lab to see what we're seeing. Ben, do you want to just explain what we have over here?
Certainly.
Here, take this with you.
Sure. This actually represents the chronology of the development of this. This is actually the very first prototype that the students constructed. And it just so happens to be constructed of building insulation foam that we have laying around the shop. And that material ended up being very, very easy to work with and to adjust. So this represents the culmination of the students receiving a lot of negative affirmation. You did a great job, but that's not what I want. They heard that a lot. And as a byproduct, Without my input, they created exactly what I wanted and needed. And then here you see a couple of the three-dimensional printing that we did. So this was sort of rough. We needed to create something more accurate with which to do our CAD designs as well as create the patterns. So there are various iterations of the design also, where it was narrower, where it was wider. And this right here this is actually one of the ones that has been cast. And we've actually incorporated some new webbing in the design that will increase its resistance to wind load. That's an important issue in an area that is where we need to build things to withstand approximately 120 mile-an-hour winds. And so even now we're actually still learning and developing this object to be more impactful, more practical, and more usable in various areas. Are there any questions? If so, I'm happy to answer them here.
Can you
or in-
explain how communities benefit from this?
Certainly. Is that me?
It is you.
Oh, really? I have your attention already. I don't mind. So, as I'll show you in the lab, what struck me, and no pun intended, but historic markers often end up being broken at the collar, which is right here. And for some strange reason, they are regularly hit by cars, to the tune of about 10 a year in most states. And so oftentimes the break will be significant enough that they can't repair it, in which case they have to replace the whole thing, which can be a very time-consuming and costly endeavor. You have the text block, which is ubiquitous, and then you have the scutcheons, emblems, insignias, and the text, which needs to be redone each time, and then recast. With this device, we can cut off the affected part and slide the original marker into the channel here, and then immediately put it right back up. And the nice thing about this is that in many respects, in many instances, the historic markers themselves are actually historic themselves. If they've been there for over 50 years, then they themselves are historic and need retention for that reason as well. So you'd be surprised that something as simple like this hadn't been come up with before. The fact that we were able to get a patent means that we were able to prove that there was no previous prior art. And that actually ended up being an extensive process. I just want to hand this off. Give me a skill saw, I'm fine. That thing does not like me.
So the Historic Preservation Lab is immediately behind us. Foundation board members, our meeting will start at 11:30, and we are 2 classrooms down the hallway interactive. So please take a minute and walk through the lab and listen to Benjamin explain. We appreciate your coming today. Thank you.
Gotta give Grant Schaefer a shout out. Yeah.
I'm running on about
Isn't
3
that the
hours,
question of the
3
year?
hours sleep for the whole week, yeah.
We actually did print a full scale. The printer, yeah. I think it was done in 40-hour prints. Oh wait, yeah, remember we bought this new printer that was taller than the state conference? Because we bought the printer, we were going to do this, we did it for cheap.
So this is one that's in damage.
Well, Ben will explain. This is what's left over from the mold?
Oh,
Yep. Yeah. So you can see this is actually one that was cast, and so we created a pattern. That's what we 3D printed, and the pattern is what you make the mold from. So this is the byproduct. This is what comes out of the mold itself. And the pattern making process was rather intensive in that you have to take into account the flow of 2,000 degree metal through a cold material. Metal cools pretty quickly, and so you have to make sure that the material will pass through that mold quickly enough. So there's all sorts of risers and channels and gates. And those you can see over here, these are actually the gates coming into the mold. This is actually the crucible that we use, and that thing, I have a hard time picking that up, and add another 20 pounds of aluminum, and we have to take that out of the furnace. It'll be about 2,000 degrees, and that'll be, as close as you and I are, and while it's out and that hot, we then have to approach the mold, pour the molten metal into the mold, and then move it back to the furnace. So you're probably looking at the device that we use to hold that's probably another 15 pounds. So you're looking at 45 to 55 pounds or 2,000 degree material that you're moving around and over the course of approximately a minute or so. So if you cast your attention over here, this is one, a marker that we had that has assisted us in the process. This one has not been broken. However, I have two examples right here of markers that have been broken. So there are typically two types of breaks. You have the collar itself right here. And in this situation, this would not be able to be repaired. We could try to weld it, but the joint would be so extensive, it would be so large that invariably this would fail at some point. And then you have probably the weakest part of the marker is the intersection between the collar down here and the marker itself. And so you oftentimes you'll get a break right there. And again, in this instance, there's really very little you can do. In the past, they would have to recast the whole marker. And as Dr. Love noted, that can range from $2,500 to $4,000 or $5,000. Whereas with this, we can retain the marker itself and merely install this new, as Dr. Love noted, it doesn't roll off the tongue. It sort of stumbles or trips off the tongue. We resorted, the initials are the HMCRV, so we started calling it the hermit crab. It's quite fun for market. Out of challenging problems like, talking about this thing, we felt a much more efficient thing.
sorry, Sam.
So I've started listing on a listserv that represents the historic marker community as a whole. As I was noting, you have institutions or organizations like the Colonial Dames, the Daughters of the Revolution, Sons of the Confederacy, all of those organizations, and actually the Garvin.
Garvin Club of
Yeah.
Canada, they could do that.
Yeah.
As well as the, what was the grants.
That's right.
Because they do our national.
Yeah, so a lot of these organizations commit the money to putting them up, but then you have this, frequent need for refurbishment or repair. So we've reached out to that listserv to try to get the word out. I think it'll take a little bit of time. There's one company in the country that casts them prolifically, or does most of the work and they do most of the repairs. So a lot of organizations are going to be, more comfortable going with them. But as we sort of develop this and get more markers repaired and replaced and put back up, we'll have more and more. We'll be able to elicit more and more confidence in this. So it's not easy. This is not an easy marketing product. It's great. It's wonderful. The students were, had such a blast on this. But you start talking to the general community and they're like, hey, it's not marketing. So we try to capitalize on the students' work and involvement to elicit interest. And through that, we hope to get more and more people coming to us for that repair. It blows my mind. I'm flabbergasted. Texas, they have 16 a year, they have 16,000 historic markers in Texas. A lot of that state is really barren, so I don't know where they are. There's probably 300 there, apparently. But large state, a lot of people committed to preserving its history, so you have them all over the place. We have 5,271, I think. And so approximately 10 a year. And then you need to take into account that there's also a backlog. Because of the costs, a lot of institutions, organizations aren't able to keep up with that need. So many states will have at least 10 to 20 of these sitting around that sort of haven't elicited the interest or the funds with which to put them back up. So our hope is that, given the fact that we can repair, refurbish, repaint and everything for approximately half or less than half of the cost, that we'll be able to get more of these going back up. Just sort of get some enthusiasm going about preservation.
So will they actually be done?
Currently, we've done a number of them here. We're actually going to initially work with Gary Knappenberger. He's going to produce them, and then we'll do the installation. As I said, it's a very, very involved process, and I don't always have the same students working with me. And so, there's the challenge of reintroducing a new group every spring. That's when we do our medals class. And so that poses, some challenges. It means that, it's very difficult for us to, sustain production. And when we're not in spring doing medals, means that we're pulling from other classes. So initially we're going to have Gary Knappenberger fabricate them, and then they'll be brought here, and the installation is something that one of my work studies or students can do with relative ease. And that'll increase the expediency and efficiency of the process.
Are the two markers that you have ones that you're actually going to work on? Or
This one right here, I'm working on right now. And so you can sort of see the process. I've removed the lower parts of the marker, the collar, and then in the past, Precision Manufacturing worked with us to clean up this channel. One of the things that oftentimes people have a hard time conceptualizing is how you create voids. Creating empty space in a mold is very challenging. And so you have to use what are referred to as cores. And so you create your mold, and then within those molds you have additional pieces that sort of float. So when the metal pours in there, that area is left free of metal. So this would have been, there would have been a core in here, and then there would have been an additional core lower part of the marker is steps. And so initially we had created a step system within the channel, but each one of these is so unique that we really struggle to get them to marry or go together easily. And so what we've ended up doing is keeping this consistent and modifying the marker itself. And so that's what we're doing right now, just taking the material down so it's narrow enough that over a couple more sessions, this will work up and end up being approximately right here. And I will, Mary Warren, she sent me a marvelous photo. This was a number of years ago. Yeah. not to require you to pass a photo, but yeah, you can see right here. This is one of our slides look back and that service and that Gail and Amy. And so, as with that and with the Jingle Bell marker, one of the design challenges was ensuring that this blended in aesthetically, and when they go up, it's really difficult to see the difference. One might actually assume that it was a part of the original marker. And so that was one of the design challenges from the beginning. The students had a problem to solve that was both mechanical as well as aesthetic. They needed something that fixed it, but they also needed something that people wouldn't notice. And I think in preservation, it's one of the least validating fields oftentimes, because if you've done a good job, nobody should know it. You go into a place and you want there to be no representation of all the effort that went into what you did. And so hopefully, no one will actually notice that we fixed this or any of those. This is actually in town, the Prince Hall masonry rock. And we have a couple more that we're working on currently. So we don't have that many, which is right now actually a good thing. We have 5 of these in inventory right now. So we're going to reach out to organizations within the Georgia community and try to stay as local as possible initially. We don't want to overwhelm ourselves with production issues. But, one last thing that I'd like to mention, throughout this process, Brian and myself recognized that this was a great opportunity to teach our students the process of invention. Oftentimes, people misclassify innovation as invention. There's a ton of innovation out there, which is marvelous, but this was true invention. And in that process of invention, you have the upscaling. The students learn how to make something, a prototype, but that does very little good if they can't take it to the next step. And so within our classes, we've tried to incorporate, John Posa came in and spoke to the students. We had another individual come in and speak to the students about upscaling manufacturing. So we try to make this as relevant as possible to all industries so that the students are going back to their places of employment or future places of employment and feeling empowered and feeling as though they have the vocabulary, the means of communicating possible innovations within their own place of work. Because it doesn't matter what program you're in, our students are on the front line. They see those tools, they see those products every day. And so, they should be the ones that we're going to first. And oftentimes, they're just not going to have that confidence because they weren't instructed in, how do you work within the infrastructure of a company.
Just 1 second, I'll be Lucy Ryan, raise his hand.
Oh.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. Oh, we really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was a lot of great back and forth between our students and us, and being able to print the initial design, of course, as Ben said, the innovation or invention process involves starting over a few times throughout so it was great.
thank you, and thank you, and thank you all for coming. Foundation Board, we're meeting in the